Welcome to Rivers as Lifeline for South Asia Conference. My name is Sarita Sapkota, and I will be your host for the day. We have come together today to discuss a topic that cuts across the geopolitics, economy, culture, livelihood, and almost all aspects of South Asian lives: rivers and water. There are a lot of discussions on these topics within countries, but a forum like this is rare, where a broad perspective from the region is deliberated not only among governments and their representatives, but within civil society, experts, and a wide range of stakeholders. So thank you for joining us, taking time, and being with us here today. I'd like to begin by welcoming our inaugural guest, Member of Parliament, former Minister for Foreign Affairs, former Minister for Energy, and spokesperson of Nepali Congress, the largest party in the Nepali Parliament right now. Thank you for joining us this morning, Dr. Mahat. To join Dr. Mahat on stage, may I please invite Dr. Stefan Rusek, Deputy Chief of Mission and Head of Development Cooperation and Economics at the German Embassy in Kathmandu. Thank you for being with us this morning. Next up, could I invite Dr. Carsten Klein, Head of Frederick Naumann Foundation for Freedom, South Asia, to also join the gentlemen on stage. Thank you very much for joining us, and I would like to acknowledge the presence of the high-level delegation from Germany with honorable members from the federal and state parliaments in Germany and other officials in the delegation. Thank you for traveling such a long distance and being with us here today. Also, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of representatives from multilaterals, bilaterals, and several other development organizations, scholars, practitioners, representatives from politics, media, civil society, and others from across South Asia and beyond. Thank you all for being here and taking time today. For those of you who are not already familiar with the organizers and their partners today, let me take a brief moment to introduce them. The Frederick Naumann Foundation for Freedom. FNF, in short, as you may hear throughout the day, is a German foundation that promotes the values of liberal politics around the world. It is funded through Germany's parliament and supports the strengthening of freedom, democracy, education, the market economy, and the rule of law across the world. It has offices in 60 countries, and it works all in South Asia except Afghanistan. The German Embassy in Kathmandu and the German Nepal Friendship Association, two organizers from today, co-organizers from today, both focus on building a relationship of trust and mutual respect among the two federal countries of Nepal and Germany. The embassy does so through diplomacy and development support, whereas the German Nepal Friendship Association does it through a more people-to-people exchange. And finally, Samriddhi Foundation, our final co-organizer for the day. If you're not already familiar with their work, it is a Nepali think tank that has been around for over 17 years now, and it has been leading research and policy action on pragmatic market solutions for Nepal. So FNF and its partners today, rather than being topical experts, have the role of conveners for this conference. We rely on each one of you to bring the technical expertise from your area to make this day one of conversation and mutual learning. We have limited PowerPoint slides to 4, and all discussions are conversational style. So we hope for your active participation to make the best of the rare gathering. So to get us started, may I please invite Dr. Carsten Klein, Head of FNF Regional Office for South Asia, to officially welcome you all. Apology for my tardiness. I would like to invite Mr. Jürgen Martens to also join us on stage, President of the Liberal Group from Germany. Thank you.
Yeah. Hello and a very good morning also from me, Honorable Minister, Honorable Dr. Jürgen Martens, Dr. Stefan Rusek, Benno Böhr from the UNESCO, Satya Srivastava, Director from SAARC Development Fund, Zulfikar Bhatt, Acting Secretary General of SCCI, dear friends and colleagues from the Meridi Foundation, good friends from our foundation, Amrish and Trupti Mehta, dear Sanjoy, Dr. Hanan from the Maldives, and many, many others. Thank you, Mrs. Sapkote, our alumna, dear colleagues from the press, esteemed panelists. First of all, I would like to say it is great to be here again in Nepal. Nepal, as we all know, is a country of rich history, culture, and natural beauty, and it is also a very progressive country and a modern country and an open country, giving us as a foundation the possibility to welcome guests from all around the region without any further problems here in the regions to come together. On behalf of Friedrich Naumann Foundation South Asia, you kindly said that already, a political, liberal, parliament-based foundation from Germany. Majorly, we are working in the fields of good governance, human rights, education, fostering social market economy and geopolitics. It is an immense pleasure for me to welcome you all for this conference. Inspiration is always needed for this topic, and therefore I might mention that especially our office in Pakistan, dear Anwar, with the excellent project of Lahoti Melo, and also Sanjoy's projects of boat clinics on the Brahmaputra really inspired us to have this conference here. South Asia undoubtedly is blessed with some of the world's mightiest as well as most economically and culturally significant rivers. And in Europe too, rivers play an important role in shaping European culture, economy, and history. And they were, and we should not forget that, lines of war. And please allow me to say that still Dnieper River lies in the middle of a zone of destruction and death in Europe. But nowadays, rivers also unfold a rich variety of opportunities, of possibilities for interaction, and many of them are a bond of prosperity and international understanding. In the midst of the current UN water decade, and exactly 1 week before the World Water Day 2023, and water being one of course, the most important resources for our future, we thought that it would be a good time to discuss rivers as lifeline here in a South Asian context, especially in 3 dimensions: the politically and diplomatic one, the economic one, and the ecological one. The purpose of this conference is, of course, to bring together you, expert policymakers, stakeholders from different countries, to provide a platform of dialogue in a pan-South Asian context. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm really very, very happy that we have here representatives from all the South Asian countries coming together. Thank you so much for all your efforts. I'm very happy to have representatives from international organizations, from Europe, and even from Mongolia. And most importantly for us is the third dimension of these conferences, that is the more informal one. The networking and the interaction, the fostering of connections, finding new opportunities and perhaps projects outside the panels and within the possibilities of our field visit and the coffee breaks. At the best, the conference can contribute to finding, discussing, and pursuing problem-solving approaches. But I am convinced that such solutions in Europe and in Asia for aquatic ecosystems, which of course are very complex, can only be found in a transboundary interregional approach where scientific expertise flows into policy and lawmaking, and where this process and outcome of lawmaking then is also implemented in reality. Thank you very much. Looking forward for very valuable discussions with all of you. Please allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to thank again all our colleagues from Friedrich Naumann Foundation, from Samriddhi, and the friends from the hotel, the friends from the technical side. Without you, it would not be possible to have organized this conference. Thank you very much, and happy having you all here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Klein. Before Honorable Minister presents his inaugural speech, may I please request him to light the lamp in front of the stage to officially inaugurate the conference? And may I also request the gentleman on stage to join Honorable Dr. Mahat in the lighting of the lamp? All right, the conference is officially begun. Thank you very much. For guests who are not very familiar with the practice of lighting the lamp, in East traditions here, lighting the lamp marks the beginning of very auspicious things. So yeah, just start it in a traditional way. Over to you, Dr. Mohan.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Carsten Klein and organizer Newman Foundation and Samriddhi Foundation for organizing a conference which is on river as lifeline for South Asia, which is, I think, very important topics. I am very pleased to be here in this very important gatherings. Thank you, organizers, for this event in Nepal. Rivers as lifeline for South Asia. I think this is very important topics, as more than 20 mighty rivers flows from Hindu Kush and Himalayan region into South Asia. In Pakistan, northern part of India, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Bhutan. And these rivers are really lifeline for centuries and thousands of years. Therefore, I think this discussion on these topics is very important and timely. In Nepal itself, we have 3 big river system, Koshi, Gandaki, and Karnali. Apart from that, we have Mahakali, which is in our western border, the common river between India and Nepal. And these big 3-4 river systems have several tributaries. They are not small tributaries, big one. We said Saptakoshi. 7 rivers make Koshi river system. And Saptagandaki, 7 river system makes this Gandaki, and which ultimately reach into Ganges. And these are not only lifelines for Nepal, but also to India and Bangladesh. With these river systems, high Himalayas, and deep valleys, with this comes challenges as well. Steep mountains, high mountains and deep valleys, it brings a lot of challenges in terms of landslides, in terms of flooding, and also this region, especially Nepal, and this northern hilly region is prone to earthquake. And not very recently we had big earthquake, which is also a challenge for Nepal. To overcome this challenge is not easy. As a speaker before rightly said, Nepal is a beautiful country. We have varied climate, varied topography, varied, these animals, birds, and also we have home to many different races. We have more than 60 ethnic groups and languages. If you just walk 1 hour from valley towards the hills, you will see different climate, from hot to very pleasant climate, and then cold. So in a small geographic region, you can experience anything. Different climate, different flora and fauna, topographies, rivers, and of course, people. We have all kind of dresses, all kind of languages, and different kind of faces. That is only found in Nepal. In such a small geography, you can experience anything you wanted. You are in Nepal, Kathmandu, but Kathmandu is not only Nepal. Go outside Kathmandu, you will see variety of things you can experience. As we are mentioning about these important topics of lifeline, rivers as lifeline, major challenges for Nepal, as to many South Asian countries, is to how to harness these precious resources for people of this region without hampering the environment. That is the biggest challenge that we are facing. We have such a huge river system in Nepal, but we are not able to use it for irrigation. Of course, we are using a little bit, but not much. Similarly, we have tremendous potential for hydropower energy generation, but we are using only fraction of it. So if you can really use these resources without hampering this environmental balance, we can do a lot. But we have resource crunches. Because of that, we are not able to invest in a big way in hydropower projects. Slowly we are picking up. I was energy minister myself. During that time, we have started many different projects. Now we are in a position to produce more electricity. We are now self-sufficient and surplus during rainy season. But during dry season, still we don't have sufficient electricity to cater our needs. So there is imbalance. During rainy season, we have surplus energy, surplus electricity. We are able to sell to India as well. We are earning some foreign currency as well. But during dry season, we need to import. So that is just enough to, compensate for what we have earned during this rainy season. So to make a balance and have a sufficient energy, electricity, sufficient for our needs, we need to have a dam project so that we can reserve this rainy season water and then use it during dry season. That is the only way we can have self-sufficiency in energy requirement as well as to export electricity so that we have foreign exchange earnings for us. Because we have huge trade deficit. Only way to reduce this trade deficit is to, not only to have this sufficiency, self-sufficiency in electricity generation, but also able to export surplus to India and Bangladesh. We have reached this general agreement to export electricity to India, similar to Bangladesh. But still we are not able to actualize to export electricity to Bangladesh. That is important for us. So if we have these reservoir projects and as well as this run-of-the-river projects, we will generate enough electricity to cater our needs as well as to have enough foreign exchange earnings. So that is the only way to go for Nepal. The run-of-the-river projects, we have several hundreds of Nepali investors, small investors. They are investing in run-of-the-river project from few megawatts to now 200, even 250, 300 megawatts. Nepalis are doing it because we allow this private sector to participate after we have this democracy in 1990. So that has now bringing fruits to energy sector. But for this bigger reservoir project, we need bigger investment, which is domestic resources will not allow us to invest in those bigger projects. We need investment in the sector. At the same time, we don't have much land to be irrigated. 25% of our land is in southern plain. We can use these rivers to irrigate those land so that we can produce more food grains. But unfortunately, river flows down to India we are not able to use those water resources for our irrigation need. So for that also we need more investment. Drinking water, we are trying to take drinking water to each and every household, but still we are not able to do so. So drinking water, irrigation, and energy needs, these three areas we want to use water resources. We have this transboundary project, water treaty. We have Koshi Dam project, we have Gandak project, but those projects done long ago in 1956, 1959, we had hardly any expertise. Overseer used to be engineers. So they had hardly any technical knowledge. In those times, we had this agreement. Those agreement has hardly give any much benefit to Nepal. So we have recently this Mahakali, this multi-purpose project, but that was more in equal terms, more beneficial to Nepal as well, but it is not going anywhere. The project which benefits Nepal not going anywhere. Those two projects, earlier projects, we did, but not much benefit to Nepal. So we need to work on these transboundary projects as well. I am suggesting in many occasions to our counterpart as well, if we can invest in this reservoir project, of course in dry season, India will get extra water. They need for drinking water as well as irrigation. So if we can have this some kind of umbrella agreement between Nepal and India, whatever extra water flows to India during dry season because of the reservoir project, the water which is we have in reservoir during rainy season and we let it flow during dry season, so that they have net extra water in India. If we can have umbrella agreement that they will pay some fees in terms of quantum of water that goes to India, then I think we don't have to worry about what project is done by which country or which institution. So whatever net flows goes to India during dry season, so they will benefit in terms of flood control, in terms of extra water, which they needed very much. And Nepal also benefits from this hydropower project for dry season, for export as well as domestic needs, and also they get extra water and for flood control. So beneficial for both countries. So we can at least agree on some umbrella agreement that whatever extra water flows, they will pay some, agreed amount to Nepal. So that is one thing we're trying to push. I don't know whether that will be actualized very soon. I'm not sure, but that is the way to go forward. And in terms of electricity export, trans-border this electricity connection, we have this 400 kV one line. Now we are planning to have more. And if we can export to Bangladesh as well, they are also eager to invest in hydropower project in Nepal so that they can cater to their own needs. So from this energy perspective, we have enough potential in hydropower to cater our own and growing needs as well as to export. So that is good thing for Nepal. But of course, challenge is how to bring resources, how to actualize all these resources in energy generation. That is the major challenge for us. At the same time, climate change is a big issue, all of us know, and we don't have much contribution in terms of this carbon emission. But our neighboring countries and countries in Europe and America, they are generating huge amount of carbon emission. If we have more this green energy, I think this compensation framework need to be used for Nepal's benefit as well. At the same time, what I think is we need to work on this. Nepal alone cannot do it. I think India, China, Bangladesh, and other collaborators from elsewhere should come together in terms of this climate challenges, as well as to foster this green energy need. We are spending a lot of money on import of petroleum products as well. If we can use this energy for transportation as well as cooking through this electricity use, we also going to save our precious foreign exchange and generate employment inside as well. So we have green economy. So Nepal has to go to green economy. We need to foster more demand inside. Now, this changes in technology has allowed us to go to this electric vehicles. Now, hydrogen also coming. So if we do that, we reduce carbon emission, as well as we will reduce our dependence on import of petroleum products. That will allow us to save our foreign exchange. That will allow us to reduce our trade deficit and allow us to grow green economy inside. So that is the way to go forward for Nepal. Another problem that we have is because of the huge river system that go to India, other side of the border, in many places because of during dry season, we have no water, but during rainy season, you see water flowing. But there are a lot of blockages, roads and dams, so that has also created problem. We are raising this issue. When I was foreign minister, I raised this issue, and we agreed, India and Nepal has agreed to jointly look into from east part of Nepal to west part of Nepal, Mechi to Mahakali, to where are the problems. Based on the problem that we have, so we'll sort this out, but that still need to be actualized. That is the challenge in terms of this plot problem. So these are some of the things that we are facing in Nepal, and probably some of this experience that we have in Nepal is experienced by many other South Asian countries as well. If you work together, for example, many river comes from other side of the Himalayas in this Tibetan plateaus, which is called this water tower of the world. So Brahmaputra, they have also one issue, India and China. We have also many rivers which comes from other side of the Himalayas. So we need to, I think, India, Nepal, China, Bhutan, and Bangladesh, and Pakistan, as well as has to work in this area so that we can use these precious water resources for benefit of all humankind without hampering the environment, without contributing to this climate change. That is what we should do. There is no escaping away. The upper riparian, lower riparian, all need to work together to have a common solution so that this river as lifeline remains lifeline. Because most of our civilization, population is concentrated in around the river. And civilization, this civilization, I think, which is the ancient civilization, grew near river. So I think in terms of this civilizational, continuity, human needs, because of this migration, you have this population, decentralized population. So they can have sufficiency in terms of local water resources that they have. But with the urbanization and migration, there is stress in some particular area where people are coming. So even in Kathmandu, we have this, we have to invest a lot of money. This is Melamsi. If we didn't have that huge migration to Kathmandu, we have enough water around Kathmandu to cater the need of these valleys. But since migration is big and coming and will continue to come, so we'll have scarcity of water, so we have to invest a lot of money in bringing water from other side of the hills. So these are the challenges we are facing. Let's go for green economy. Let's go for cooperative solution. And let's make it sure that rivers as lifeline remain lifeline in South Asia for benefit of all. Thank you very much.
It is quite relevant for Honorable Dr. Mahat to have joined us today, who has remained the Minister for Foreign Affairs, who has remained the Minister for Energy, because we know how big a role diplomacy and politics plays in that. And that is our very first session after the coffee break. But before we get there, some few important announcements. One is that Dr. Mahat inaugurated the conference by lighting of the lamp, and perhaps the modern equivalent of that is for me to release the social media hashtag. So if you are using social media, please use hashtag Rivers as Lifeline for your social media posts to spread the word quite effectively. There's also a selfie board just outside the hall for people who love making selfies. So now that we have brought the conference to the 21st century, we can move on with the inaugural addresses. May I please invite for the keynote address Dr. Stefan Rusek, Deputy Chief of Mission and Head of Development Cooperation and Economics at the Embassy of Germany in Kathmandu. Thank you very much.
So, Honorable Minister and Member of Parliament, Mr. Martens, Dr. Klein, colleagues from Friedrich Naumann Stiftung, participants from all over South Asia, welcome to Kathmandu here in Nepal. Sabe Janalai Namaste, how I was told to welcome you here in Nepali. Well, more than 1.5 billion people depend on South Asian rivers, which is roughly about 20% of the world's population. When I say depend, I think about drinking water, I think about cooking, I think about bathing, I think about irrigation. And if you even focus a little bit just on 3 rivers in South Asia, the Indus, the Ganges, and the Brahmaputra, we talk about 600 million people who live there, who live from these waters. And these areas are also one of the most densely populated areas here in that region and also over the world. However, population growth, rapid urbanization, not only here in Kathmandu, but all over South Asia, and increasing industrialization have put and are still putting enormous pressure on the use of these waters. This has resulted in water scarcity, deterioration of water quality, and the various tremendous challenges for the region, looking at social, economic, and environmental well-being. The issue is that rivers don't have a loud lobby, and people living next to the rivers, I think about people in squatters, for instance, don't have a loud lobby. Animals that live in the rivers or live from the rivers don't have a loud lobby. They're just silent. So the existence of the river and the use of rivers is too often taken for granted. And the nexus of rivers to health, human health, well-being, wealth, and culture is often overlooked. So as this is a conference for discussion, one of the main questions I was pondering yesterday and the days before is, are rivers lifelines or were rivers lifelines? So I want to give a big thank you to my colleagues from Friedrich Naumann Stiftung for raising this absolutely timely issue, for gathering colleagues from all over South Asia. And thanks to all of you for taking a time for about 2 days to discuss these issues, because this is not only a problem every country, like each country can solve, but there is a big international component, like your Honorable Member of Parliament just mentioned before. Let me mention, just focus on 3 statements that I would like to also give into the conference for further discussion. The first statement that I want to give is that rivers can contribute to well-being and health. I think about nutrition, I think about culture, and I think about health itself. So the Food and Agriculture Organization estimates that about 80% of the land in South Asia is used for agriculture, 80% of the land. And 60% of the population, they work and are engaged in agriculture. And this agriculture needs irrigation. Looking at the Ganges River Basin, for instance, 80% of that land is irrigated just from this river. And let's not forget livestock. Animal husbandry, where water is needed, fishery, aquaculture, which provides protein and income for millions of people. And when you talk to villagers here in Nepal, where the German government co-financed solar water pumps, for instance, you can really understand the importance of river waters for hundreds and thousands of millions of people here in Nepal. I will only speak about Nepal most likely because this is where I'm based, but I think many of you can think of examples from your countries and contribute this to the discussions later. Let me come to a second point here, culture, because rivers are also an integral part of our human culture worldwide. So millions of people every day, every year visit religious ceremonies next to rivers, festivals next to rivers, or pilgrimages. I think, for instance, of the worldwide known Pashupatinath temple here in Kathmandu. Varanasi in India is another example which immediately comes to my mind. And these temples, for instance, it has been custom for centuries to even bathe, to take a bath in these supposedly holy rivers. If you want me to fit in an example from Germany, we don't have Hindu temples to the extent you will find here in South Asia, but culture also happens next to rivers. Like, for instance, in Hamburg, our new Elbe Philharmonie, which one of you might have known, one of the latest and newest, most modern concert halls also is in the River Elbe, one of the biggest rivers that we have in Europe. So, however, increasing pollution and degradation of riverine ecosystems poses significant challenges to the preservation of these cultural sites, but also to the religious practices and basically also to health when bathing in these rivers. Talking about health, rivers are used for recreation all over the world. So people walk along rivers, people play soccer, whatsoever, next to rivers. They relax in parks next to rivers. When I was at university, I used to swim at the River Inn at my university town. And where I grew up, at the River Elbe, close to Magdeburg, I used to swim in the river as well. And I was told by many Nepalis that when they grew up, in the 80s, in the 90s. They even swam in the Bagmati River here in Kathmandu when they were kids. In many cities also, there is extremely expensive housing next to rivers because they want to live there. So, however, and please excuse me this kind of reality check, when you stand on the Bagmati River, for instance, here in Kathmandu. And I'm taking the Bagmati River because I can talk about other rivers. I don't want to talk about other rivers here. You understand the enormous competition that there is for the use of these rivers. Rivers have become and are easily and cheaply available sewage drainages these days. For example, only 20% of Kathmandu's human wastewater is treated. So if you look at about an estimated 6 million people who live alone in the Kathmandu Valley, you talk about human waste of 4.8 million people who goes directly into the environment and at the end of the day into the rivers without any treatment. You will also see plastic over plastic in these rivers, because rivers have become a kind of free of cost waste dump. And I don't talk about the plastic bottle here, which I also saw at my university town, or a kind of biscuit coverage here. I talk about industrial style waste dumps into rivers, and the rivers will take away the problem, here in this case one day to India, in India to the ocean, in Pakistan to the ocean. So this is what's happening here. There was another thing that I read in the newspaper the other day about the airport in Pokhara, where the disposal of waste and dead animals into the river next to the airport is now offending airport security there, because birds are coming to prey on this, to prey on the dead animals in there. So there is an issue. So there is an issue not only here but in South Asia. But at the same time, let me come to my second statement. Rivers can be a home of an amazing biodiversity. And you don't have to look far to understand this. When I think about this, I think about, for instance, the Bardia National Park, an amazing national park here in Nepal. I think about Chitwan National Park. In a week, I'm going to Kushi Tapu Wildlife Reserve. And you can just see the biodiversity, the different types of crocodiles, the Gangetic dolphin, river dolphins that swim here in Nepal and other countries, sweetwater clams, fish, trees, algae, flowers, and so on. So you just can't stop. But the increasing demand for agriculture, and that we just also, Mr. Honorable Minister talked about before, the habitat destruction, the pollution and overfishing, the use for rivers to generate electricity or other infrastructure, the impact of climate change, this puts a significant pressure on these ecosystems. And according to the World Wide Fund, I don't know whether a colleague of the World Wide Fund is here right now, more than 70%, so 70% of South Asia's freshwater species are threatened. This is more than 2/3. And they are threatened with extinction. And compared worldwide, this is the highest rate that you will find worldwide. Let me give you a short outlook on a third statement I would like to give here, and this is like rivers can create wealth. One of the aspects I don't have to cover anymore because Honorable Member of Parliament covered it already, the aspect of energy. Just let me add that Germany was one of the pioneer supporters of hydropower electricity here in Nepal. So with the biggest grant that was ever issued by the government of Germany after the Second World War, we financed the construction of Mittelmarsjangdi power station. Big then, well, still today, it generates 70 megawatts. Back then, this was a gigantic amount of electricity. And still running, and today you sell the electricity to India. So just closing this one. A second issue I would like to add, a component, is trade. Because according to the World Bank, inland waterways account for 10% of the freight traffic in South Asia, and this enables international trade and generation of income. And from a European perspective, trade and wealth within Europe, going back to the 17th century, 18th century, this was basically has started to be created by the low freight costs on rivers. Think about the Oder, where also in Germany we had this huge ecological catastrophe last year. The River Elbe or Rhine rivers are trade lines. They are a cheap way to transport goods from one bay to the other. And there have been, well, this is kind of good news, in recent years, a lot of efforts to modernize the transportation on these rivers by investing into new vessels, by dredging waterways, by building new ports. But however, no surprise, even this comes with an ecological cost. And we've experienced this in Europe as well. What happens if you straighten rivers, if you deepen rivers, water flows faster, floods, inundations become much more increased. The flooding pattern changes, groundwater level changes, biodiversity is impacted. So let me just briefly summarize my three statements that I just was talking about. First one is rivers can contribute to well-being and health. The second one is rivers can create wealth. And the third one is rivers can be home of an amazing biodiversity. I'm using can, I'm expressing it as a possibility because we can't take it for granted anymore that this is really the case. So coming back to my questions, are rivers lifelines or were rivers lifelines? Because to all the problems I was just briefly mentioning, there are technical solutions. And they already exist, they don't have to be reinvented. There are water treatment sites, we know how to treat wastewater. We know how to set up sustainable waste management sites. We know how a waste dump works and what we can do with it. We know how to sustainably manage urban rivers and also rivers in other parts, and we know the consequences from worldwide experiences. So at the end of the day, if you ask me, it all boils down to a question of A, political will, and B, a question of good governance. And I hope that this conference today will shed light on the competitive uses and the stress that is put on rivers here in South Asia, but also worldwide, on international good practices of sustainable river management, on the potential for international cooperation, because rivers don't stop at the border, and of course on good practices how to enhance this political will and how to implement the laws. My predecessor also briefly talked about this. Well, before closing my remarks, I always think about the very famous and ancient saying that you can't swim in the same river twice, because it's always changing, the water is always different. But I hope, and let's hope, that most people in South Asia will be able to swim in their rivers soon again. That's my wish and my hope for you. I wish you a fruitful discussion in this conference, and thank you very much for your attention.